All right, guys, welcome. This is our XR Sales and Marketing group chat. And we have an awesome panel for you today, perspectives on business-to-business marketing, sales, business-to-consumer, some very traditional approaches, and also some other aspects of sales that are a bit more groundbreaking. So, good group discussion for you today. We've come a long way in terms of sales and marketing from the early days of like a Kia catalog or scanning a QR code. Today's XR sales and marketing experiences are much more integrated, they're much more fluid, and they interact with the customer all throughout the sales funnel. So today, this is your chance to hear from folks who are actually doing this work. Save your questions, we'll field a few from the audience towards the end. And with that, let me introduce our panel. We have Scott Aldridge with CM Smith, Amanda Clarida from Volvo, Brooks Clemens from Adidas, David Kleiner from Toyota, and Michael Maloney from Wayfair. So we're gonna start off, we'll let them each do their own introduction, just briefly who they are, what they do, and a bit about their first XR project. So in fact, I'll get us started. Brent from Accenture, and I help Fortune 500 companies such as yourselves implement XR solutions. We don't build our own product, we don't have a set of eyewear or a software package, but we take the best of what's out in the ecosystem, the best of the vendors that are over there in the hall, and we help their technology work with your existing IT systems. With that, Scott.
Sure, thanks for having me here today. Scott Aldridge with CM Smith. CM Smith is a 5,000 person private global engineering firm, and I work with business leaders to deliver mixed reality solutions for our clients.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Clarida. I work at Volvo Trucks, and what I do is training and development. So we are here to, our goal is to make sure that our salespeople know what they need to know and feel comfortable with that information so that they can sell trucks. We, as innovative as Volvo Trucks is in the transportation industry, training and development is a little on the old school side right now. So we don't have any current projects today, but we have ventured into virtual reality, and we're continuing to see what else is out there and available that's new and interesting that we can actually apply in the training genre and see if it works for our people.
So I'm Brooks Clemens. I work for Adidas in the US. It's a 55,000 person global sportswear company. My specific job looks after market research tools for the North American market. So I look to build advanced analytical tools, market research methodologies and processes, and then look to deploy kind of emerging technology to be able to deliver them both in-house from B2B between concept design to merchandising, product storytelling, and retail, to then the account-facing side of our businesses. And that can be either another retailer or our own retail.
I'm Dave Kleiner, I work for Toyota, and right now we're kind of experimenting with XR in the client education space and also in just overall sales. So we've done a few experiments, but as you can see, our dealerships, we're not really doing it yet as a primary focus. We're still experimenting.
I'm Michael Maloney from Wayfair. I lead engineering for all of our customer-facing XR and 3D products. We're using this technology to better help customers solve the problem. Will it fit in my space, both from a spatial and aesthetic purpose? And we are just getting started with this stuff.
Love it. So this morning when Andy was kicking things off, he talked about how we're now in an era with XR where a lot of people get the use cases. They, for the most part, believe that there is benefit, but it's time to start talking about the doing. So I want to talk about the doing. Let's go a little bit more in depth on each of your projects and also talk about the results you achieve. That might be hard statistics if they happen to have them, or it might just be anecdotal evidence of the sales or improvement to brand. But let's cheat and start down at the far end. Mike, we're going to kick us off.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, we're just getting started with this kind of stuff and experimenting with where where it should be in the funnel. So a lot of our efforts are around how do we build platforms that put this technology all over the site, all over the app to see what people do. The two main solutions that we have in the market right now are the view in room, where you can use the phone to see items in your space with real dimensions, all that kind of stuff. And a 3D room planner, which is sort of a web-based tool that you can set up your own rooms and use our catalog of 3D models to do that. We are still working on how we track ROI, but we have seen a really strong uptick in engagement, especially from viewing in room. We found that customers are 3.5 times more likely to buy a product that they've actually looked at in their space. So that's a pretty positive outcome right now that we're seeing.
Okay, so my experiment was called Lark, and I didn't pick that name. It was the Lexus AR kit. I don't know why they named it after a joke, but the name was Lexus like this. So the way we went into this is we had to figure out a way to train all our dealership personnel on the new features of the vehicle. The vehicle was becoming too complex that we'd have to fly people off to a training center and say, okay, we're going to spend a week here and learn about all the new features, and we could do a test drive or something. And then while I started addressing that problem, I said, well, we have the same problem with our customers. The vehicles are too complex, and most of our customers don't even know how to, from our safety systems to the infotainment systems and how to sync your personal devices to everything. So I said, well, we can use the same thing twice to kill two birds with one stone. And that turned out pretty well with my alpha prototype I threw out because I thought I could just download Unity and do this myself, and it was just horrible. So then I realized I had to hire someone to help me out. And so the beta came out, and we showed that to a few folks, and then all of a sudden our customer user engagement folks got and said, oh my God, you're solving CUX. Really, what's the CUX? I'm thinking it's another car. And they're like, no, because you've actually built unknowingly an owner's manual and a reference guide all in one. It's pretty cool. So then we got a little more funding, and we actually built what we now know as Lark. So you go up to Plano and go to the Toyota Experience Center. It's there on the wall, so you can check out that and experience it. So it works in 2D, 3D as a projection, right now it's 2D and 3D images, and then if you go to the vehicle there, also works as a projection out to project into the vehicle. All the features pop up and tells you. So what I started out as an education tool and a training tool turned out to be exercise and readability, how to do software engineering properly, and it really kind of spilled into a product that I had fun building. So
That's really cool. I've talked before how I think that XR is the instruction manual of the future, but it sounds like it's also the owner's manual of the future. It's a great use case. Cool. Okay, Brooks.
Yeah, so my project actually started with ROI as the focus of it. I did look after tools that try to get at what is the investment that we're putting in the company and what are we getting out of it, both with regards to sales, but also with regards to consumer sentiment or attribution or lift. And so the project sat outside of that normal role, but I started to notice we were bleeding a lot of money in different parts of the efficient process, and a lot of it was based on just the workflow. It's a whole process. We're a 100-year-old footwear manufacturing company, and a lot of our processes are still kind of backward facing. So we looked to find a vendor, we looked to find a hardware supplier that could potentially fix the solution. So instead of starting with an emerging technology and seeing what we could do with it, we looked at a problem and then decided to tackle it from which vendors would we go with and then which hardware. And so as we started to get down the process of solving this cost overrun in part of the business, we started to realize that not only does the vendor software as well as the hardware unlock a lot of potential within the area of the business that we looked into, but it also started to gain legs. So it became a great tool to be able to sell a vision to a client. It also became a great way for us to kind of compartmentalize and put in a time capsule a lot of the information that was going into the design process. So we could then carry that down the go-to-market process all the way to retail, which was previously a lot of siloed work. And so by enabling the different functions to work collaboratively in a digital space, it not only kept all of the information through that collaboration in one space for you to go back and reference, but it then also allowed us to look at what we had spent money on in the previous years or previous cycles, and then look at what we are spending now, and then we start to realize an ROI based on cost. Because that is oftentimes an element that isn't captured in ROI. You look at what's the sales uplift, or what are we doing in terms of growing brand affinity awareness, at least in my industry. But to add cost to it gives the senior leadership a much better exposure into what $1 of investment going forward could get them not only across the business, but in their own gross revenue as well.
So in many ways, this was a collaboration platform that supported the marketing process. Did you consider any off-the-shelf products, or just say, like, we need to build this for ourselves?
Yeah, at the time that we had looked, there wasn't a off-the-shelf merchandising collaboration project that would have facilitated our go-to-market timelines, as well as the different levels of proficiency we had in 3D design versus sketch design. And so when you're dealing with a product that could be in a 3D asset or could be just a flat paper sketch, you had to figure out a way to bring both into a single environment to allow them to do that. And so we did have to go find a more customized solution, and we didn't have expertise in-house. So we just happened to get lucky that in Portland, Oregon, where we're stationed, there's a vendor that does just this work. And it worked out quite well. It's awesome.
Well, we sort of came by this quite a bit differently. Similar to Dave, we work in the transportation industry, so Volvo was introducing some new truck models. We were updating some of the technology, the cab of the truck, it's gonna look different, it's gonna be sexy, that's what you're gonna hear a lot if you're anywhere near the trucking industry. We want sexy trucks these days. So our goal was to figure out how to show these products to people who could come to our launch events, to our salespeople who don't have the opportunity to travel and come and see the one or two, spec trucks that have been built specifically for these events to introduce out to the market. Because, trucks aren't built overnight. It takes sometimes months to come off the assembly line. So, we want to show enough and share enough to, create an incentive for dealership personnel and then ultimately customers to say, we want this truck. It's awesome. It feels good. It looks good. We want to buy it, but they're really buying the concept. So how do we bring this concept to life for people who don't get to do the ride and drive, at the event, who don't get to see, walk around and get a cab. So that's kind of what created our venture into virtual reality. We had done a proof of concept with a vendor, actually one of our vendors that we work with primarily for creating e-learnings and some of those standard formats of training came to us and said, hey, this is this cool new thing, virtual reality, if you want to try it. So we did a proof of concept with them and it looked good. And when this launch event came along, again, Volvo was always considering what's the best way that we can put this out there to make it look good, for it to be enticing and sexy. And we had already had this relationship, so it kind of blossomed into how can training support this effort, this marketing effort. And we collaborated again with the same vendor, and kind of along with our marketing team, and created essentially a virtual tour of our product. So they could, see the outside of the truck, they could go inside of the truck, they could see some of the new options inside the cab and the dash, click on buttons, move the steering wheel, that kind of thing. So it was as close as we could get to having someone actually see a real truck. It worked well. Some of the things, that we learned is that, some of these projects need to take a little bit more time and thought and preparation before you just kind of jump in. But, when you've got an event that's planned for a particular date, you've got to, go full steam ahead and figure it out as you go, which is what we did. And, ultimately the experience was a really good one for a lot of the people who were at the event, but obviously they were there, so they did get the benefit of the product. We didn't have a thorough enough plan for after the event on how to, put this new offering out there to the rest of the folks that really needed, this opportunity. But we're still figuring it out. It's something that we'll probably continue to play around with, maybe some other options as well. But ultimately, we did what we wanted to do. We did accomplish the goal. We got it completed. It was ready for the event, and it was pretty well received. But in the long run, we've got a little bit more work to do.
Okay. Good. Thank you. All right, Scott.
Great, so the name recognition. Anyone in here heard of Toyota, Adidas, Volvo, Wayfair. CDM Smith. Very few of you, if any, have heard of us, but we are an early innovator in the use of mixed reality. We use augmented and virtual reality as well. But when Microsoft announced the HoloLens, I didn't think it was real. We fortunately had an opportunity to go see it in their lab in mid-2015, and I was convinced at that point, because everything we do is based on 3D models in a design engineering firm, it was a technology we needed to invest in. So we partnered with Object Theory, and I have no problem saying their names because they're fantastic partners of ours. We created with them the world's first mixed reality collaboration platform. They have since created a platform called Prism. Check it out. It's essentially what we've adopted to use after using our own for many years. And what started out is the idea of how can we get the best use out of this. We know we want to use this because it's so powerful for showing 3D visualizations. And I'm so used to talking with HoloLens on, I keep pulling my hands back because when you do that on HoloLens, it do weird things. But anyway, what we found was that a tool that was meant to do work and be very collaborative ended up primarily in the first year or so being a premium sales tool, because it became so evident to us that we were very early in our work with mixed reality, and no one else had a collaborative solution. In fact, I think Object Theory ended up writing the collaborative solution materials for Microsoft based on what they did for us. There was no web development kit or HoloLens development kit when we did our work. So kudos to them and to us for doing that. But because mixed reality is so powerful and so engaging, it was a differentiator for us that we've been able to use to go up against our competition at pursuit time, and a tool that we continue to use for what it was meant for, which is collaboration on project development, project delivery, design review, safety review, task guidance, training, lots of different use cases. Yeah, it's a firm believer in mixed reality, and it is the most engaging technology there is.
A large lift in sales for you guys.
It's paid for itself many times over.
I like it. Okay, great. We'll pick up the pace with some faster questions here. I think one of the interesting things that in my conversations with you guys has been that sometimes it's been beneficial to call the technology augmented reality, and other times that has either scared customers off or confused them, psyched them out. What tips and tricks have you found? Any observations? Do we take this head on? Do we bill it as an AR? Or is it best told by another name? Anyway. Yeah.
So we have an interesting problem in that the building the technology itself is actually not rocket science for us. We're starting with simple solutions because we have to bootstrap with those. Those are the things that people are starting to expect. However, our customer base is 35 to 65-year-old women, not 25-year-old dudes who like to play video games. It would be much easier if it were the latter rather than the former. And so we have to find ways to sort of put, to meet customers where they are. And a huge part of that is actually just that. It's like UX writing, it's content strategy of never calling something AR floor planner or something like that. It's calling it view and room or 3D room, not even 3D room planner, room planner. And that sort of helps soften the blow of like, you go from having this mental model of saying, that's this new technology that I don't understand or I don't need, or it's not ready, the measurement stuff doesn't work, things don't look right in the room. They're still kind of cartoony to saying, okay, well, this actually fits now with the problem that I'm trying to solve, which is, will this rug fit in my house so I don't have to return it, which is, not so hard when you have to return something small to Amazon, but when you're talking about a couch, that most people just keep them at that point. So we deal a lot in those large items and shipping those out at pretty rapid speed. So that's really one of the biggest innovations, as silly as it sounds, that we've found is just, use language that's accessible and put it where customers are rather than making them download some separate app or anything like that. So that's kind of how we've worked on that.
Yes.
We experienced a similar, issue. So in training, in my head, and what we've kind of preached a lot is, call it what it is, be very clear and very upfront. But with something like this, I think it's a little bit different when you consider your audience. And our audience, similar to what Michael was saying, is our guys are, imaging. So, and not just drivers, truck drivers are aging, the truck industry itself is aging. We want to, on one hand, you want to create things using the newest technology so that you can sort of attract, new people to the industry, a younger audience, a younger demographic, but you still need to kind of cater to who's here now, who's working in this industry and doing this business. So we never specifically considered what do we call this. We actually didn't call it anything. We just put it out there.
Yeah.
And people tend to gravitate toward the people who gravitate toward things that look interesting. I've never seen that before. What is that? Hey, why's that guy wearing a headset?
Right.
Why don't you put it on and see? So, it was just sort of create an experience and offer it, which is what we did. And, it kind of brought in a particular audience, but it's an interesting question. It's tough to decide.
I was going to say, for me, it was, Microsoft called it mixed reality, so I call it mixed reality.
Mhm.
It's the HoloLens, and there's really no other experience like it to me. And in the industries that we serve, everybody does virtual reality.
Sure.
Very few do mixed reality, and no one does mixed reality.
It's interesting you guys serve a base of consumers that more than not are technology averse. Any additional suggestions related to that, or even just observations about who's using your technology? David, I know you were a little surprised that it didn't always follow perfect age parameters. Can you talk more about that?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it was all over the place. So internally we called it LAR because to get funding I had to call it what it was, kind of confusing. But externally we just released it into a small focus group, and we just said this is the owner's manual app, and we didn't know what to call it. And we go, oh, let me see, and they just stopped. They started calling it the owner's manual. And then the wildest response I got was, well, it'll work on my jitterbug. Well, maybe you shouldn't be driving anymore. But no, the age spread was all over the place, especially on Lexus. We have the smaller cars that are faster, and we got the young crowd and the gamers, and they immediately took to it. Then we had more of the female crowd, and they were a wide age band, and they took to the app instantly, and the older men were kind of more resistant. So it was kind of interesting how that kind of fell out. But as soon as we said it was easy, it's like, hey, capture this QR code, it'll download it for you, and they can play with it. And they're like, I don't have to read that 5-pound manual with a glove on. I'm like, no, it's all right here. So that it was instant once we showed how easy it was. So the adoption was pretty easy. And then for the older gentleman, which I thought was hilarious, I said, well, what if we gave you a $500 coupon? So like you either pay for the owner's manual, which is $500, or you just get the free app.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll take the app. So that's how we turned them around real quick. But yeah, as long as the technology is easy, they seem to go for it. It's not scary technology. We found it's just easy to adopt.
I was a product manager once for a smartwatch for the elderly, and we thought our target market was 84-year-old women. We would show them this device, and they would tell us, great, it's fantastic. For my 105-year-old mother, like they always thought it was for someone older than they were. But, yeah. All right. What else about adoption? What would you say to someone who's thinking of spinning up a new project around XR sales and marketing? How to get adoption, how to prove your use case, anything from the beginning when you were thinking of these projects that helps you get to where you are today? Yeah.
So it was an interesting time within the company when I started to deploy this type of thought. The average age of our company is 27. The average age of the person that we sell to is in their 40s and 50s. So the adoption rate that I figured would happen in the company was not necessarily a function of what did we call it or what was the technology. It was how we introduced it, the space that we introduced it to different people. And so a large part of the beginning of the project was going in and doing a bit of epidemiology on the way that the company works and the way the different groups work. And so if you have a part of the company that tends to operate in a big group environment, sometimes a smaller work environment where they could get used to the technology, so we were using immersive VR. And so sometimes people feel a bit self-conscious putting on a headset and then kind of closing off the rest of the world to what they're doing. And so kind of decreasing the space and the number of people that were involved in it helped to improve adoption rate. And then when you were doing more client-facing work, not calling it anything, but just informing them that this is the way that we operate, and having someone who's been proficient in the adoption lead the way also helped a lot of other colleagues within their immediate team or other teams began to see how easy it was, how it could potentially apply to the way they're trying to sell or the way they're trying to build the process. And so adoption just kind of grew organically that way. But there was a lot of work we did upfront to realize what is the situation, who might be an early adopter of it, who might be a late adopter, and then how could we increase kind of organic adoption through power users without labeling them power users.
One of the things I heard was that in order to get people to use it, it had to look real. So if you guys agree with that statement, any tips on, and less on the technical aspects of like, oh, we got the shaders and the lighting right, I think that's a different discussion. But like, how did you create an experience that looked and felt authentic for your users? Yeah.
And it's a good question. I think we could have done better. Because inside the experience, when we see, or when I've seen in the past, you go out to seminars like this and, you see something that looks really awesome. Oh, it looks so real, it's so realistic. It looks just like a plane, or just like a truck, or just like a car. And I always kind of I felt like our final experience looked more digital than, it should. It didn't look as real as I thought maybe it could. But I think that's a product of what, we had to work with when it comes to like your CAD drawings and your images and things like that. But I agree that it should look as real as possible, because I did see some other products that were built that just, you really felt like you were immersed in something, real, or as real as it could be anyway. I think we all know it's not, but you need it to look as real as possible. So I do agree that that's important to try to get to a certain level where it feels good.
Dick?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from a sales point of view, it had the seamless, obviously, the actual product and the digital right now almost identical. So we spent a lot of time, we actually threw out the CAD drawings. We thought we'd save some money by taking the CAD drawings and stripping off the layers of engineering data and using this final resulting product as a marketing product. No, it didn't have the detail and depth we needed, so we wound up doing a photo shoot and doing a 3D camera view of the inside and stitching it all together to the point where if you zoom in, you can count each stitch in the steering wheel. You can tell all the wrinkles in the leather. It's a one-to-one match with all the icons, whether they're stamped on a piece of plastic or if it's a digital icon on whatever screen cap you're looking at. So we spent a lot of time making it as real as possible because it had to be seamless. Otherwise, some clients would know or a potential buyer, and they're going to say, "Oh, this is garbage." And then your whole experience fails. I mean, we have the best content in the world, but that image is wrong. It's done. So you have to spend that time to get that image right.
Yeah.
I would say for their customers, that's, I'm sure, true. For our use case, it's kind of the opposite, simply because as an engineering firm, we're looking to take the models that we create anyway and make use of them without doing anything. So if I have to do anything like change material or texture, I want to do as little of that as possible. So the only time I spend extra time, or we spend extra time on making a model look more realistic, is if it's for a public outreach where we're going to a town, we're having a town meeting, and they're coming in to look at a structure. Then we would spend a little more time, but believe me, it looks nothing like what these guys did. So.
Yeah. I'm pulling you in anyway. So.
So if you look at Wayfair's site, any product imagery on Wayfair's site, you see a large percentage of it is 3D renderings. We don't do photos anymore, which obviously saves a ton of money. So we've invested pretty heavily in the 3D art department that's capable of doing that kind of work. These guys are obsessed with
Yeah.
But mostly, what's the fall off in the velvet, like that detail of like, this isn't right because that doesn't look, this doesn't refract correctly, and they do countless iterations of this stuff. The challenge for us was transitioning that to real time because obviously our needs are not quite as sophisticated yet simply because we don't, in the consumer, available technology to consumers, we can't actually render that quality. Our consumers are not using Unreal or Unity or anything like that, they're using a phone or a desktop, on the web. And so our initial assumption was, okay, well, if we make content for real time, the size actually matters more than accuracy of size matters much more than the realism of the content. We were like half right about that. It does matter, but our QA standards were so pragmatic that we could pass things that were like, this bed looks like it's made of steel, like literally the whole thing. And that's when we started seeing, okay, that's actually not the complete picture. Like we do need to put a lot of energy into investing in our archetype plans, in which there are many targets to produce content specifically for real time and improve the look and feel. That's a huge ask from our customers right now, is get more real. So.
I was going to ask you to also comment on, I like this discussion we're having about CAD models because it's certainly the important ingredient here. So many of you on the panel have the luxury that your CAD models are at least theoretically in-house, and it's just a matter of tracking them down. In your shoes, you've got to go to all these different vendors who may or may not have the models. They're in different states of quality. How do you guys deal with that challenge?
Yeah, so we have 11,000 suppliers, 14 million products in our catalog, which is ridiculous. And so we don't have the models. We have to get them made. So we have one of the largest 3D studios in the Northeast working on this stuff. And we make the models. We don't, suppliers don't give us models. Mostly they don't. And so, yeah, we, in terms of our investment in 3D, it goes beyond just like consumer tools. It goes all the way up to the art departments. Some of the partnerships we have, we helped found the 3D Commerce Group, which is a Kronos initiative saying, let's set standards for how we build and transmit and, share like 3D content. And so we've had to do a lot, putting that into place because we don't have the advantage of actually owning any of that data. We have to build it all ourselves.
Sure.
So I'll just comment again to the other side a little bit is that when we get models from vendors, manufacturers of different components that go into a design, they want to show every nut and bolt and screw thread. Right. One part can be your entire resource budget for displaying in HoloLens. So we prefer not to have detailed models like that, and we will decimate them as soon as we get them if we use them. For us, it is about the spatial aspect of it. Is it clashing with another design, a piece of pipe or a wall or whatever? So again, for us, less detailed, at least for now.
Yes.
I think it depends on, again, we talked about how cool does it need to look, and that's for you guys to decide based on your project. But I think, when it comes to CAD drawings, they can be sometimes as detailed or way too much. For us, it was like we got half the CAD, and they were kind of like, well, just duplicate it on the other side. But it doesn't look like that on the other side. There's, subtle differences or some nuances that need to be created on that side so you can get a more realistic effect. So sometimes you have way more than you need, and sometimes you have half of what you need. But based on your project and what you're trying to create on the back end and how little it needs to be, I think, you'll have to figure out how to work with what you get.
Yeah. All right. So I want to have a discussion now on some of the basic blocking and tackling parts of some of these projects, but not just like, oh, here's the technology stack we use, and more about like what you learned, what surprised you, what was different and unexpected, or what advice you would give to our audience. So it's along the topics of like vendors in-house or hiring a vendor, technology stack, how to pick hardware, software, planning your project, anything that was unexpected with your stakeholders or your budgets, your timelines. So that was kind of a matrix question, but if anyone has sort of suggestions to the audience on the basic aspects of an XR sales and marketing project, I'd love to hear any pearls of wisdom. Yeah.
we found out quickly we had to go outside. We had lots of engineering talent, some over the other room, and they'll do more of the CAD drawing type stuff, but again, it won't help us in the sales environment. So like, so my alpha prototype was very engineering looking, and it was just, it's horrible. So we then had to research an outside vendor, and of course, as soon as you say, I'm doing an XR project, they just come beating down your door there, they have one that says they can do it. So what I did as a criteria said, well, what are the awards out there for this type of work? And so you have two camps. You got the gaming camp, and we have the Hollywood, motion picture camp. Those guys are really good. And you start looking at their awards, and then it kind of narrows it down, like, oh, who's the guys winning the Shorty, the Cleos, and there's, and you like, then it comes to a small set, and you're like, all right, which one of these guys can I afford? But it's definitely worth the investment because they do make magic for you, and it's I go down again if I have to start. Awesome.
I'll say when we started out in 2015, there were no mixed reality developers. The skill set needed to put together what we did was very eclectic. And I think it's only now coming into an area where you have talent out there that can put it all together, and there are products now, obviously a lot are demonstrated here, software and hardware that can allow you to put all that together. But back then there was no one, so we partnered with outside firms. We continue to do that because we don't have the expertise, and they do.
We did it the opposite way. We did it in-house. Which, yeah, I mean, it's a challenge either way, I think, but one of the big things for me in engineering is that Wayfair does okay with we're a tech company that sells furniture image, but we're not quite there yet with the Wayfair as an XR and 3D company that sells furniture. So if you have a candidate who has an opportunity to work at Blizzard or ILM or something like that, they're going to do it, And so a big part of our efforts in my office right now is trying to sell that as like, well, you could come to Wayfair, that would be just as good because, we have these opportunities. The problem is not all that stuff is released yet. So I can't even talk to interview candidates about some of the stuff that's coming in 2020, which would be much more compelling. But I think, that would be less challenging once we do that. But yeah, that's been interesting.
So basically you just say, here at Wayfair, we've got just what you need.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
We're all taught that song on the first day of training.
Thanks. I have two more questions. I want to hear from you guys what's on your minds. Start thinking. Most of our discussion today has been around AR. There's a little bit on the VR training side, but for the majority, this has been an AR-based discussion. And I read the other day that 2/3 of consumers want to shop in VR. What do you think's holding that back? Why are we talking about that? It could just be the mix of panels.
So there are a couple of things that I started to discover, the difference between AR and VR, not only around people being self-conscious about wearing VR, in a consumer setting or a customer setting, which might be prohibiting people from adopting it more. But there are physical elements around feeling nauseous. You have to have good VR stuffing sometimes to be able to think a lot of things. The way that the environment is set up oftentimes contributes to whether or not the space is too overwhelming. Almost in a way that if you go to a museum and you interact with the majority of the exhibits, sometimes you just need to decompress for a while. But we exclusively used VR first because we needed to deliver the most vivid, detailed imagery possible, knowing that we couldn't import a high quality asset. So if you have a really heavy, really detailed asset, to pull it into a space and be able to talk about it really bogs down the system. But we still needed a way to find that level of detail with a lighter asset, and so virtual reality became that solution. In that you don't necessarily need it to sell a product, and for the most part, shoes and apparel and sports can sell themselves. But when you're talking about going up against another manufacturer or a couple of manufacturers in a retail space where one wall is completely covered in product, you need a way to differentiate yourself as a company. And then you also need a way to differentiate your product within that selling opportunity. So virtual reality became that immersive, impactful medium for us to be able to get after that type of thing in a way that AR would have kind of fallen flat because you can see, especially mixed reality in general, you're dealing with transporting yourself into the space rather than trying to interact in your current physical space and then adapting in your mind what's going on. So it just requires slightly less mental gymnastics.
All right, a little short on time. My last question, I don't like the where is this going in 5 years question. So instead, think about an obstacle that's blocking your XR initiative right now. And if we were to remove that, where might you end up or what might you be able to achieve? So for instance, if we had 5G, if we had better digital asset management systems, et cetera, better hardware, what could you guys accomplish? On the farm.
Oh, all right. I think form factor is huge. I think that's a big barrier for a lot of people to be looking through this tiny screen. Like, admittedly, that's not the best experience. It's the only one we've got right now that's available to the average person. But I think as this technology becomes more ubiquitous, people like Apple, hopefully they'll release that mixed reality headset soon. That stuff pushing forward the form factor and making it just more normal for this to be a thing. And in 10 years, maybe somebody says, of course that's how you shop. I expect that. Just the way you do with smartphone now. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, we're just following the smartphone market right now. There's 2 billion of them out there. Apple and Android have great AR kits, so we're just riding on top of that until there is a VR thing that's widely adoptable that everyone has in their pocket.
Yeah, if there's a way to get the immersive experience into an XR environment, that would probably be the biggest unlock for us. It would allow people to navigate space and do their jobs without feeling encroached or enclosed upon. Because the adoption rate, like most people talked about, is just going to be a similar adoption curve to some new type of tech. So that'll eventually happen as behaviors change. But to really allow people to work in space without having to immerse themselves and close themselves off would be a big decision. Cool.
All right, one question from the audience. And we're raising hand, shout out, yes.
I'm Maria Sorensen with Ferguson Construction. I talked to Ferguson's at the group session, so feel free to repeat yourself. So my question is, do you have a good way of quantifying your involvement with virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality, so you can know you get a return on the investment? Or is it more like everyone is doing it, I don't want to fall behind, it makes sense?
Yeah, the question was how to quantify XR and measure ROI. It was similar to what we opened with. I think I was pretty impressed, Mike, what you said that 3x increase anyone that uses AR.
Yeah.
How do you measure that?
That's just one sort of small nugget, which is it may be meaningful, sure, but in the long run, I think there has to be more. And so, as I said, I just like to clarify what I breezed through before. It's like for us, we're just looking for how it's supposed to work rather than how it's supposed to immediately give ROI. So we're building these platforms that hopefully, in 6 months or so, you'll see a lot more of those types of tools from Wayfair in spots that you wouldn't normally expect them. And that's us just trying to learn from our customer as we try to solve the problem. Where does this matter to you, and where is it most idiomatic in the experience of shopping for your home?
Yes.
For our reductions, we're going to be looking obviously for some kind of uptick in sales. Or, if we end up using this with our technical service people out in the shops and things like that, are you doing it faster? Are you doing it better? Are you getting more trucks in and out quicker? So we already measure those things. So what we would probably do if we implemented this going forward, on a greater scale, then we would continue to measure the same criteria and then we just kind of compare based on your format. So are we doing it better, faster now that we've introduced this format as opposed to
I'll say that very subjectively, client engagement for us is gone tremendously using mixed reality. And it has been a significant differentiator for us in the pursuit of good work.
All right, guys, well, we are out of time. Please join me in thanking the panelists.